All right. So if we quickly take a look at the first chapter, just to give you a reminder, we can see that it's a rare book collection given in memory of this person to this person. Great. We can see that it's 1900 that this specific one was published, which is what we're going for. We have a copyright 1899, but published in 1900. And we'll go ahead, and just a reminder, the first chapter is called The Cyclone. We talked about Dorothy living in Kansas. We talked about Uncle Henry and Aunt Em being farmers and them being gray. We talked about, how Toto is the reason that, she's excited and she still has some kind of joy to her life. We went through, there was a cyclone. Dorothy fell, she wasn't able to get in. And we left with, in spite of the swaying of the house and the wailing of the wind, Dorothy soon closed her eyes and fell fast asleep. And that takes us to chapter 2, which is titled The Council with the Munchkins. Okay, she was awakened by a shock so sudden and severe that if Dorothy had not been lying on the soft bed, she might have been hurt. As it was, the jar made her catch her breath and wonder what had happened. And Toto put his cold little nose on her face and whined dismally. Dorothy sat up and noticed that the house was not moving, nor was it dark, for the bright sunshine came in at the window, flooding the little room. She sprang from her bed and, with Toto at her heels, ran and opened the door. The little girl gave a cry of amazement and looked about her, her eyes growing bigger and bigger at the wonderful sight she saw. Rachel, can you read the next paragraph?
Yep. The cyclone had set the house down very gently. For a cyclone, in the midst of a country of marvelous beauty, there were lovely patches of greensward all about, with stately trees bearing rich and luscious fruits. Banks of gorgeous flowers were on every hand, and birds with rare and brilliant plumage sang and fluttered in the trees and bushes. A little way off was a small brook, rushing and sparkling along between green banks, murmuring in a voice very grateful to a little girl who had lived so long on the dry gray prairies.
Thank you, Rachel. Charlotte, can you do the next paragraph?
While she stood looking eagerly at the strange and beautiful sights, she noticed coming toward her a group of the queerest people she had ever seen. They were not as big as the grown folk she had always been used to, but neither were they very small. In fact, they seemed about as tall as Dorothy, who was a well-grown child for her age, although they were, so far as looks go, many years older.
3 were men and 1 a woman, and all were oddly dressed. They wore round hats that rose to a small point a foot above their heads, with little bells around their brims that twinkled sweetly as they moved. The hats of the men were blue, the little woman's hat was white, and she wore a white gown that hung in plaits from her shoulders. Over it, Over it were sprinkled little stars that glistened in the sun like diamonds. The men were dressed in blue of the same shades as their hats and wore well-polished boots with a deep roll of blue at the tops. The men, Dorothy thought, were about as old as Uncle Henry, for 2 of them had beards. But the little woman was doubtless much older. Guys, I need my glasses. I can't see this. Oh, sorry. Was doubtless much older. Her face was covered with wrinkles. Her hair was nearly white, and she walked rather stiffly. Rachel, can you take it from there? I'm going to grab my glasses.
When these people drew near the house where Dorothy was standing in the doorway, they paused and whispered among themselves as if they were afraid to come further. But the little old woman walked up to Dorothy, made a low bow, and said in a sweet voice, "You are welcome, most noble sorceress, to the land of the Munchkins. We are
Good.
so grateful to you for having killed the wicked witch of the East and for setting our people free from bondage.
Dorothy listened to this speech with wonder. What could the little woman mean by calling her a sorceress
Yeah.
and saying she had killed the wicked witch of the East? Dorothy was an innocent, harmless little girl who had been carried by a cyclone many miles from home, and she had never killed anything in all her life.
But the
But the
little
little
woman
woman evidently, go ahead.
Okay, but the little woman evidently expected her to answer. So Dorothy said with hesitation, "You are very kind, but there must be some mistake. I have not killed anything."